Welcome to Jurassic Pokémon. Back in 2021, I remember seeing a bunch of images about this amazing exhibit that opened in Japan. It was centered around fossil Pokémon and their real-life counterparts, and this was such a genius idea, effectively being an entertainment art piece that also educates. The theming was so on point, and with how the fossil Pokémon were brought to life, they were basically just treated as actual creatures. The art that went along with the exhibit was done by Hitoshi Ariga, an artist whose work I've really come to love recently. He's been working with Pokémon ever since Generation 6 and does a lot of promotional art, but most notably, he designed the fossil Pokémon of the Kalos region, Tyrantrum and Aurorus. See, Ariga is a huge dinosaur fan. You'll probably find that out by just following him on Twitter. And not just that, but he also loves the Jurassic Park franchise. And while he did get to do some illustrations for a recent Japanese novelization of the film, Pokemon is not immune to this influence because look at how Pikachu is dressed for the fossil exhibit. That is just Dr. Alan Grant's outfit. Anyway, I think it's so cool that all of this happened. It's just too bad that I can't actually experience this for myself and I just have the pictures to look at. Well, the future is now thanks to science. We live in a post-COVID world, so anything is possible from the confines of your own home. That's right, you can actually take a virtual tour of the exhibit. So get your goggles on and let's check it out. So first off, in the entrance, there's a huge Tyrantrum fossil replica next to an actual Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. And that's really a theme of the whole exhibit. While it is focused on Pokemon, they're all shown in context with their real-life inspirations. And I guess it also serves as some definitive proof for what exactly these specific Pokemon are based off of. Of course, the size of these replicas are just impressive. I can't imagine how difficult it was to build these and transport them. Having these two T-Rexes in the open entrance feels like yet another Jurassic Park reference, but I feel like that'll be the last one for now. Going into the main part of the exhibit, we're greeted by a statue of Pikachu riding an Aerodactyl. From a lot of the images that were posted online, I think you really only see the Tyrantrum statue and this one here. But using both of these as the openers, we'll quickly discover that there are basically statues for every part of the exhibit. I decided to follow the footprints on the floor to the left where we see some of these banners that no doubt give us a summary of how the exhibit will be, though it's all in Japanese as well as everything else on this tour, but I feel like we'll be able to get the gist of what these are saying. The first fossil Pokemon we see is Omanyte, which is based on the Ammonite. There's a little blurb about how fossil Pokemon and restoration work in the video games, and we also get a replica of a Helix fossil as well as Lord Helix himself. I'm assuming these are meant to be life-sized, but that is a lot bigger than I expected. Right after that, there's the actual science of how exploration and excavation are really done with tools and real fossils on display. I like the approach of how this is all done, showing you familiar Pokemon and the fictional way the video game handles things, followed by the paleontology approach. After that, we meet an Omastar that's very happy to see us, as well as the standard posters showing the Pokemon and animals. Again, this is all original art drawn for the exhibit, and I love how clean it looks. It's so interesting to see real-life animals drawn in a Pokemon-adjacent style while still being on model. Can you say on model when describing something that actually existed in real life? Anyway, I had no idea Ammonite shells could get like that, but hey, it looks like there was a lot of variety. There's also this poster that appears to explain the differences between evolution in the Pokemon video games and evolution in the real world, which is so cool to see. Going from this direction, there's a section for Tortuga and the sea turtle it's based off of with a replica of a cover fossil. And on the other side is Archon and Archeops, the ancestors of modern bird Pokemon which mirror the Archaeopteryx. The Archon skeleton looks so funny, but I guess all bird skeletons look goofy like that. It's also kinda neat that the Pokemon side of the poster shows off a Pidgeotto while the real life version shows off a regular pigeon, so I guess they're kind of included in this as well. Interesting that the Kabuto line seems to have the most physical props, having a Kabutops skeleton, a Kabuto statue, and a dome fossil recreation. I guess being one of the first fossil Pokemon gets it a little more favoritism than the others. Or maybe just because it's in the back of the exhibit there was more space for it, I don't know. Though Aerodactyl section just kind of gets the posters, but I guess it did get the statue at the very front of the room. I do appreciate that it looks like they make a point of including several different flying reptiles that it's inspired by, and not just the pterodactyl for its namesake. One of my favorite sections is the one for Rampardos because we get to see the differences in the skulls at different stages of life, which I didn't even know about until I checked out the exhibits. But yeah, this one doesn't have any statues or recreations, just the actual fossils. So at this point I'm really wondering how they went about determining which Pokemon gets what. I guess it just depends on the information they wanted to present and what is relevant to that information. Because like if they wanted to make a point about the changes in the Pachycephalosaurus' skull but just had a Cranidos statue, yeah, that wouldn't work out. So I'm very happy with this portion of it. Anyway, let's speed things up. There's a Lilip statue, which is one of my favorites, even though you can kind of see where the images from the 3D camera are stitched together at certain angles. Honora shows up with a recreation of an Anomalocaris. Kind of funny seeing its eyes are just transparent spheres in real life. There's another section for Tyrantrum with a little Tyrant skeleton, making it the only complete skeleton evolution line of the exhibit. They're just flexing by having a T-Rex skull inside there as well. There's also a section talking about alternate methods of preservation like amber, and with the fact that Mamoswine is there as well, I assume it's also probably talking about freezing? Relicanth also shows up, maintaining its status as an honorary fossil Pokemon. It even gets a little recreation of a Coelacanth, the animal that it's based off of. It's probably easier in this case since Coelacanths aren't actually extinct and are still living. Yanmega also gets a shout out as one of those ancient Pokemon. You know, like all the others that evolved by knowing the move Ancient Power. With those Pokemon specifically, I always considered that knowing the move Ancient Power would unlock this ancient evolution that was around back then in prehistoric times, and including Yanmega in this exhibit as the example of prehistoric insects I think basically confirms it. And of course there's a Bastiodon skeleton and portion for Shieldon with a Triceratops skull. Though unfortunately in this virtual tour I didn't see a section for Amora and Aurorus. Hey, this is Editor GatorX here, and I hope I don't sound too terrible. I don't have my full setup with me, but I found the reason for this. It's because this was a traveling exhibit, so depending on the location that they were set up in, they would have different larger fossils. Some of them would travel with the exhibit, but obviously very big skeletons would be relegated to that specific location they were in. Though I did also find even more virtual tours of some of the other locations it was in, and I'll leave those in the description as well. So obviously everything that came prior in this episode was based on the tour that I took, though I definitely encourage checking out basically all of them because they all have something different to offer. But overall I think it's a pretty cool experience. I had so much fun looking around this little virtual recreation, but I still think it would have been so much more fun to actually be there. But I'm glad that this was at least available to people internationally. Pokemon does have other statues and related art pieces that they set up in Pokemon centers and for things like worlds or occasional pop-up shops, but having an event that takes place in an actual museum and has more of a thematic approach brings the world of Pokemon a little closer. It is still one of those things that's like, oh, that's really cool, I just wish there was something for fans across the world that they could experience. But I am extremely fascinated by this exhibit's existence at all. Personally, I love visiting museums and aquariums and things of the sort, and there are so many here just in Southern California that I have access to. So obviously I'm pretty privileged there and I'll acknowledge that. But with this virtual tour of this Pokemon fossil exhibit, I do love that that's at least accessible to anybody. So let me know what you think of this whole exhibit. Did you know about it before this? Would you like to see anything similar in the future? Oh, and also I might as well mention it now, but I'll leave a link to the virtual tour in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this tour of the Fossil Pokemon exhibit. They spared no expense. Thank every channel member for your continued support, especially the Great Gators, Brandon Mork, Cheeseburger Lasers, Gavnuts, Green Topaz 213, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Largos, Michaela, Mochizuki Yoru, Nomad Nobi, Quago, Taijirai, Volity, and Pastel Blood. If you would like to support, get a shout out here as well as access to emotes for comments and live streams, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes, but anyway, this has been GatorX. I'll catch you all later.
Dinosaurs don't just walk amongst you. They roar their terrible roars and gnash their terrible teeth. Get ready for Jurassic Park 3, Sunday night at 7. Kick back with the flicks, every Sunday night.